Hey there, everybody. My name is Alex Tack from Fuzzy Cube Entertainment, and joining me today is
This is JD from Plains Digital Inc.
awesome. Well, everybody, today we have a topic. We're going to talk about homelessness here in Regina. It's a really important topic near and dear to myself and my co-host here this evening. And to start things off, we want to talk about where we got the data from and the news sources that we use to create this podcast. So what I had ended up doing is reached out to different members of my community group just to find out those that are kind of closest to these areas and interests, where some places to start to gather some information, not necessarily around homelessness in Regina specifically, but looking at even Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and then looking at some of the most recent things happening in news articles around the tent cities that have been kind of popping up outside of City Hall, and then the one that was torn down most recently under Taylor Field, and some of the historical things have been taking place recently in Regina that drives this. So the information that we got, some things from a news article perspective, we have some content that from Brian Labey and Andrew Atiero from CBC News, as well as Mill McLaren from CBC News. There's some information there provided from CTV Morning Live. There was some information from articles written by Wayne Mantika from CTV, John Cairns from SAS Today, and Janelle Mendez and Andrew Benson from Global News. So because these are publicly available on the website, these are some of the information that we pulled out as sources to use the context for the news articles that we discussed. And as far as the data that we use to feed to the AI to create these conversations and craft some of these ideas and pull out the important pieces they wanted to know about, the data sources came from the homelesshub.ca, Hunger Counts, so Food Bank Canada. We have povertyfreesask.ca, some information from there, as well as Homelessness Learning Hub, and Carmichael Outreach is where we got some information from too as well that were referenced both in the news articles and recommendations from some of the people we reached out for. So on that note, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just thought it was cogent to point out that when he talks about how we've got some data from all these sources, we've got reams and reams and reams of data, over 150 pages. Do I have that right?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Any of the findings, the large documents, any of the deliverables, the plans, I put those over into a giant blob in one email and sent it off to Karma, asking it to learn everything there was and to digest all that content, to pull out all the stuff that was important, look for ideas, look for, solutions within there, what's not being talked about, things that, if you're looking through hundreds of pages by yourself, it's easy to miss stuff. Right. But it did a really good job of boiling stuff down, getting at the main and the core points and pulling up all the important discussion pieces for sure.
Right on. In future podcasts, we're definitely going to discuss more about the specific Karma engine and how it works and what it does and why it's so awesome. But that is not our topic for tonight. So to move us right along, we're talking about homelessness in Regina. Where are we at? What's that about? It's a bad deal.
That's right. Totally, JD. So on that note, do you have any personal experiences around homelessness and food insecurity that you'd like to talk about and mention to us?
Well, sure. Just to lay down some street cred. Like I experienced extreme poverty in my younger life, to the point where as a young kid I had to learn to pay attention to where the next meal was coming from. That's that's a traumatic thing that never goes away. And I experienced the same level of poverty not that long ago. Thanks to COVID, just like lots of other Canadians, I found myself not quite homeless, but damn near as close as you can get. It was the most scared I've ever been in my life, and it's still pretty darn fresh. So that's kind of why we wanted to lead this podcast series with homelessness, because it matters to both of us. It matters to you as well, correct?
It does. So although, I feel fairly financially stable in my adult years and I have steady work, and honestly, with me being in IT, COVID wasn't as disruptive for me as it was for other industries. But growing up, for sure, I came from a single parent household. Food, my mom was really proud and wasn't looking to use the food bank unless it was absolutely necessary. So I remember many a time having week-long helpings of Hamburger Helper, and you just had to kind of stretch that out as far as you possibly can. I'm not going to bore people with the stories. Those that know, and you can kind of leave it at that, right? And to your point, like, it sticks with you. You don't forget these things. Yeah, for sure. So these are all topics that are, incredibly important to both of us. And on that note, it's not going to be us that's going to be discussing this. So behind this project, right, we have some AI characters that are powered by the Karma AI project. And as JD mentioned, we'll talk more about that at another time. But we want to talk briefly what is and who is Karma. So Karma was the first prototype character that we generated, building this Karma AI stuff. And, she through and through community minded, wants to look at making change, wants to, you know, academically thinking of things. So pretty much, the point guard when it comes to research and taking large amounts of data and boiling it down. It's also the character that would have digested those 150 pages of information and condensed it down and did so through the lens of the personality that's there driving this AI character. But Carmi is not alone. She does have a co-host, and JD is going to tell us a little bit about Jackson.
Jackson is another character that was developed later on. He has his own kind of unique personality and style and way of speaking, way of thinking and processing data. There are numerous AI characters already built out by the Karma AI engine, but we chose Jackson tonight, obviously, because his role is as an AI political commentator and comedian. So with that in mind, some potential trigger warnings. We have to remember that this is automatically and artificially generated content. And as a commentator and comedian, he does tend to make light of everything, even when it seems a little crass. That happens a couple of times. I've heard in some of his speeches, he'll come off like, you can't say that, Jackson. What the hell? So, you've been warned. That's all I want to say.
No, absolutely. And to that point, be mindful, right? This is something that, it's set up, you run it. I think very few edits. I think there was a couple snippings here and there, some odd audio blips that just really didn't make sense. Otherwise, this is exactly what got generated based off the information being fed to the Karma AI studio. So on that note,
important to note, because people that aren't too familiar with it just yet don't realize that amount of information is relatively light. Once you've fed it its initial data set, when you want it to create content, you just sort of tell it, this is what you're talking about, off you go. And the next thing you know, you've got 30 minutes of intelligent discourse. That's my fanboy moment for the podcast. I'll shut up now.
Oh yeah, for sure. You spend a minute just putting some information in, you hit send and check back in 28 minutes later and pop, instant podcast. Yeah. So in the future episodes, we're going to look at we will be doing a part 2 where we will be focusing more on solutions. So the intent of this one was to really digest what's out there for information and what's been going on in Regina specifically. So before we're doing part 2 in the coming weeks, please send us emails. If you have any questions you want to ask these AI characters around these topics or other news or information sources that you think would be worthwhile pulling into the conversation, let us know. We only know what we know, and we're always looking for balanced arguments on either side and information that we can get from any place to really shed light on this very important topic. And on that note, folks, this is YQR Talks.
Enjoy the show.
Hey there, you beautiful souls, tuning in from all corners of the world. This is your buddy Jackson, and it's high time we cranked up the volume on some truth-telling. Thanks for joining me here on our lively and enlightening radio show YQR Talks. Boy, oh boy, we've got a delightfully dicey issue coming at you today. A big exuberant shout out to my fine buddies, Alex T. Catch of Fuzzy Cube Entertainment and JD from Plains Digital. Man, you did an exceptional kickoff with that Facebook Live session leading into our radio show. Really got the ball rolling and the heart pumping, you rock stars. Today, folks, we're about to dive into an issue that's all too real, not only here in our beloved Regina, but all across this great nation. Homelessness, a topic that should require no introduction, but somehow remains overlooked. We're going to dive right into the diverse issues that garden this bitter seed, ranging from family breakdowns to mental health, addiction, and of course the one that keeps all of us on our toes, the ever so chilling rising living costs. Don't you worry though, think of this as a buffet, not a one-course meal. We'll be dishing out hot servings of policy recommendations and the impact of COVID-19 on homelessness. And you can bet we've got a stock pot full of ideas, cooking on how we can help our brothers and sisters treading these harsh waters. Despite the seriousness, remember we got room for some fun too. What's life without a little laugh, right? Now before we kick things into gear, let's pay homage to the maestros behind the scenes. Although not official sponsors, these peeps are the backstage rock stars doing the deep work. So here's to you, Brian Labby, Adeolua Atayero, good folks of CBC News, CTV Morning Live, Janelle Mendez, Andrew Benson, Wayne Mantyka, John Cairns, and Will McLernan. Your dedication adds depth to our discussions, and heck yeah, you all make us proud. All right, my dear friend and wonderfully wise co-host Karma, it's your turn to step into the spotlight. Over to you, champ. Remember, folks, laughter's best served shared, so let's crack the code on homelessness. one chuckle at a time.
Well, hello, you glorious globetrotters. This is your resident communications connoisseur Karma, bringing linguistic acrobatics and philosophical ponderings to your speakers. Thanks for that ravishing introduction, Jackson. You always know how to get our minds whirring. Let's take a moment to toss some digital confetti to the stalwarts battling the winds of adversity in silence. They may not be our sponsors, but, my friends, their work is certainly worth a round of applause or fervent jazz hands if you're a bit audacious like me. Homelesshub.ca, Hunger Count Foodbankscanada.ca, Poverty Free SAST.ta, Homelessness, LearningHub.com, and let's not forget the sterling folks at Carmichael Outreach. These teams are not only doing commendable work, but also equipping us with the artillery of knowledge and perspective against the dragon of indifference. So, take it from me. Your hyper-intelligent, communication-savvy co-host, it's going to be a spectacular journey unraveling nuances and extracting solutions. So put on your thinking caps, fasten those intellectual seatbelts, and let's kick things off, shall we? But remember, as Jackson put it, we're cruising through this with a share of laughter because, well, a hearty chuckle makes the world spin a little smoother. Now, who's ready to dig into this buffet of discussions, soaring high on the wings of positivity and innovation? Let's roll.
Well, Karma, I must tip my metaphorical hat to you. Not only have you whipped up a spectacular introduction to this show, you've also warmed up our listeners for the main course for today, a hot and steaming discussion on homelessness. Aren't we just a pair cooking up a storm of thoughts here? Now, dear listeners, let's take a detour from the beaten path and do a little beeline into the hive of homelessness issues. It's no laughing matter, but we could all use a spoonful of humor to help the medicine go down, right? After all, we're not just talking stats and facts here. This, my friends, is a reality show where the reality is as hard as my aunt's day-old baguette, too hard to swallow sometimes. So remember, folks, we've all got a role to play in this. Let's roll up our sleeves and get our hands dirty. Whether it's the fast-paced life in Saskatoon or the serene charm of Regina, homelessness is a reality that's not limited by the boundaries of geography or culture. Now let's talk numbers, shall we? In 2022, Saskatoon reported 550 homeless individuals. More than half of that number, 59% to be precise, are identified as chronically homeless. And, drumroll please, a whopping 90.1% identified as Indigenous. Similarly, in 2021, Regina reported 488 homeless individuals, with 79% identifying as Indigenous. That, ladies and gents, is a wake-up call that's louder than my alarm clock after a late-night pizza party. But hey, don't let the grim news get you down. Picture this. A society where preventive measures, shelter diversions, and support services are as readily available as those late-night pizzas. And trust me, I've gone some lengths for those pizzas. Karma, over to you now. It seems like we've got a full plate here, but I'm sure our listeners will appreciate your insights, and of course, your whip-smart wit.
Jackson, you paint such a vivid picture. A pizza slice reality? Hold the cheese. And speaking of pizza, I'm pretty sure we could call solving homelessness a supreme pizza problem. Complex, layered, and requires a good working oven to cook up effective solutions. My fellow audio adventurers, let's try to sizzle through some of these chilly numbers. The specific data points are as stunning as a prairie sunset. Saskatoon sees over half of their homeless population as chronically homeless, and the Indigenous representation in this demographic is alarmingly high. And we see a similar story unfolding in our sister city, Regina. But this doesn't have to be our future. We can remake it. Like Jackson so vividly put it, imagine a society where support services are as readily available as takeaway pizzas. What a world that would be. A world where we do more than just acknowledging the facts, we act on them. Speaking of which, dear listeners, let's not lose sight of the ways we can contribute. The gears and cogs of change aren't solely in the hands of policymakers and strategists. They're also within our reach, our means, and our resourcefulness. Like a good game of checkers, coordinating our efforts cleverly can lead to victory or, in this case, a step closer to alleviating homelessness. Each one of us can be a beacon of change. Let's scratch beneath the surface of the ordinary to understand the extraordinary resilience of those grappling with homelessness. It's about time we treat homelessness as less of a societal defect and more of a shared responsibility, shall we not? Let's muster up the courage to admit that these are not just Saskatoon's or Regina's numbers, they are Canada's numbers. And these are not just Indigenous struggles, they are humanity's struggles. After all, we're all in the same boat, or as I like to put it, on the same radio frequency. If you're intrigued, don't worry, there's a lot more to dissect and discuss in our forthcoming segments. And you ought to know, your insights are the secret sauce of this conversation. So stay tuned. Over to you, Jackson. What's the next slice?
Karma, your pizza analogy sure hits home. I mean, seriously, why can't solutions to societal problems be as readily available as pizzas, right? But you know what they say, life ain't a pizza party, folks. Just picture this. Imagine dialing a number and saying, "Hi, I'd like a large supportive housing, a medium mental health care, and could you please add extra income security on that?" Now just imagine that instead of hearing the unfortunate, "Sorry, wrong number, we only serve pizzas," you'd hear, "Sure, that'll be ready in 30 minutes. But alas, my auditory accomplices, this ain't the case, but let's not get completely deflated here. Just like a flat tire doesn't mean the car ain't good." Similarly, these daunting numbers on homelessness don't mean our beautiful country, Canada, ain't worth the fight. Now, Karma, you hit the nail on the head. These are not mere city numbers. They're Canada's numbers. And my peeps, if we're going to clean up this mess, we better make sure we're wearing our heaviest duty gloves. This means throwing our weight behind social safety nets, cost of living adjustments, tackling the deep-seated systemic issues, and most importantly, not forgetting the power of food banks. And let's not forget, affordable housing, income security, and mental health support. They, my friends, are the unholy trinity needing our strongest, boldest action. Oh, and a word of advice, dealing with issues like this is like eating an elephant. Don't try to do it all at once. Lastly, let me just say, we didn't exactly plan for the after-party that followed COVID-19. Now, did we? We binged on benefits, but didn't think about the cleanup, increased food bank visits, struggles of seniors and children, and our racialized communities bearing the brunt of the burden. But I can't help but think, behind all this gloom, there's a silver lining. Because just like a late-night pizza delivery, we met Gary. Just be able to turn around and deliver on this one slice at a time. Now, who's in for another chunk of this discussion pie? Because let me tell you, I'm just getting started. Ha!
Oh, Jackson, your elephant analogy absolutely tickles me. Just picturing us all collectively munching on this gargantuan societal pachyderm certainly gives a new meaning to the phrase food for thought. Now, folks, Jackson's right. This big old homelessness elephant isn't going to get eaten in one sitting, so to speak. It's going to take an array of platters, a melting pot of strategies, and, dare I say it, a potluck of collective effort to really get through this meal. It's like we're at this grand banquet, and social issues are stealing away pieces of our assorted delicacies, bite by bite. But let's not put away our spoons and forks just yet. Instead, let's resist the pull of despair and use these utensils as a means to cook up change instead. Affordable housing, income security, mental health support. These are not mere garnishes in our societal stew, but essential ingredients. We can't just latch onto one and miss out the others. It's like insisting on a pizza made of just cheese and forgetting the sauce and dough. That's not a meal. It's a meltdown. And oh, dear listeners, we didn't order this post-COVID cleanup as a side dish, but here we are, mopping up the mess with all we've got. And you know what they say about cleanliness being next to godliness, right? Well, I say social cleanliness, inclusive strategies. They could be our staircase to a more divine societal state. But remember, dear friends, just like pizza toppings, every bit counts. Each grain on the scale can tip it towards a better tomorrow, so let's keep the discussion cooking. Your inputs are the yeast that ascends the dough of our collective consciousness, reeling it back in. Indeed, the reality of homelessness can seem as chilly as our Saskatoon winters, and the numbers often hit harder than the prairie winds in Regina. But remember, adding heat to the cold is how we make things rise. It's how we bake a loaf, grill a fish, and perhaps it's also how we might simmer down this boiling issue we're simmering in. By the by, folks, who's up for some dessert?
Well, butter my biscuit and call me Regina. Or should I say Regina? We're cooking up quite the situation here, folks. It's like we've mistaken the pepper shaker for the salt shaker, and now we've got a homelessness crisis spicier than a tickle from a ghost pepper. The prairies are not just about the winds and winters anymore. It's about the rising tide of homelessness that's sweeping through like a bad storm. Ha! Like you mentioned, Karma, it's quite a banquet we're at, a smorgasbord of societal issues, where homelessness is a dish served colder than a Canadian winter. But then again, if life gave you lemons, you wouldn't try to eat them all at once, would you? So let's take it step by step. In the salad bar of social issues facing Canadian sites, we see a bitter mix of systemic breakdowns, addiction, mental health crises, and rising costs, making it a tough morsel to swallow. In Alberta's medicine hat, we see a resurge in chronic homelessness that's harder to shake off than a bad karaoke night tune. As for our lovely Regina, the tent city built had more layers than a Napoleon cake, with the police chief hinting at a political cherry on top, and then boom. It was gone, faster than you can say snowstorm, leaving a question mark that looked oddly like a crooked politician's smile. Yeah, missing that pizza delivery service, aren't we? The one that could serve up affordable houses, stable income, and mental health support. It's like ordering a pepperoni pizza and ending up with pineapple. Some say it's still good. I say we gotta toss out and reorder. But folks, you gotta remember, yes, the winters are cold here, but our hearts are as warm as maple syrup. We need to step up and support our fellow Canadians, and who knows? Maybe we could turn the region from a poutine of problems to a perfect tourtière. Now, Karma, let's slice this pizza of discussion further. Over to you.
Jackson. As always, your culinary analogies have me both chuckling and contemplating. We might have enough for a cozy dinner party here, I'm telling you. You've got your sliced pizza, melted cheese, and even the divine staircase. A quaint image for an acute issue, true, but food for thought indeed. Homelessness indeed upsets the socio-political salad bar like a precariously perched crouton. A precarious balance of elements and a single misstep. Well, we're left on shaky grounds, aren't we? Much like our neighbors in Alberta's medicine hat, a place that has stolen many headlines in their struggles and resurgences with this pressing issue. It's not that the ingredients are missing, but the recipe seems amiss. Now, take Regina, where we've witnessed our social blanket being stretched too thin, its weave revealing more than just a chilly breeze. The tent city, sprouting like a mesmerizing mushroom, was a safety net for many seeking refuge from the bitter cold of reality. Yet, in a blink faster than a prairie snowstorm, it was whisked away, leaving behind trails of hushed questions and muffled heartbeats. And friends, this prompts us to ponder, what's next? With our salad wilted and our pizza parlor mystery continuing, we find ourselves looking for a delivery service, one that could offer a beacon of hope, a promise of sustenance, affordable housing, steady income, accessible mental health support. Yes, the whole 9 yards. And while we're at it, how about we add some dessert to this meal? Oh, not just any dessert, dear listeners, but rather a slice of humble pie of realization. The realization that homelessness is not an individual predicament, but a societal burden that we all share, knowingly or unknowingly. These are tough topics to digest, sure. However, like a heaping plate at a potluck dinner, we can't shy away from the challenge. So reach out, grab a metaphorical fork, and let's dive in. Let's embrace these trials and work to make our society a little better, bite by bite. Hey, you never know, tomorrow's sunrise could be bringing the scent of fresh solutions, a perfectly baked policy pie. Indigestion is one thing, but turning a blind eye? Well, that's a heartburn we don't need. And remember, any meal, no matter how piquant or complicated, is best savored when shared. So let's gulp down this hearty soup of dialogue, for we have miles to go, folks, and we journey together. Hoist your spoons, and let's dig in, shall we?
Ah, Karma. I tell you, we went from talking about a potluck dinner to a full-blown gastronomic gala there. You see, folks, that's why we love Karma. Appetizers, entrees, desserts. We're getting a full-course meal every time, and no tip required. But Karma, as they say, too many cooks can spoil the broth, and seems like we've got a bunch of cooks right here, but no one has the recipe. Especially when you think about Medicine Hat and good old Regina. When it comes to those sleek, affordable housing projects, it's like promising a 5-course meal on a bun, all fluff and no stuff. Sure, they may look yummy on the outside, like a delectable glazed donut. But when you bite into it, all you get is air. So what happens when these donut houses crumble? Like our friends at Old Taylor Field site. I mean, say you got this gorgeous 5-tier wedding cake, right? But you built it all on a base of a soda cracker and one errant elbow bump at the reception, kaboom! Frosting and fondant flying everywhere. Same thing, ain't it? You got these lofty plans for affordable housing, but with such fragile foundations, they crumble quicker than that wedding cake. We're talking about real people here, folks, not just numbers and statistics. When the encampment at Taylor Field came down, it wasn't just tents being removed. It was homes. Lives disrupted. It's like throwing a bucket of cold water on a hot griddle. You get a whole lot of steam and a bunch of unhappy chefs. Like Karma pointed out, these complicated issues feed into a societal burden that we all shoulder. Listen, folks, I'm no expert. But when an oven's on fire, you don't just stand there arguing about who left the gas on. You first put out the fire. It's time we rolled up our sleeves and started beating down this encroaching inferno of homelessness together before the whole kitchen's in flames. And hey, here's a foodie thought to nibble on. What if we start by recognizing that the folks out on the streets might just know a thing or two about what they need? Maybe, just maybe, they should be at the forefront of conversations about homelessness instead of being the last ones consulted. After all, nothing worse than a sous chef who doesn't listen to the head chef, eh? What about it, folks? You ready to gulp down that soup of dialogue and get cracking at the pickle we're in?
Right on the money, Jackson? The societal broth we're stirring does have more than a pinch of complexity. And while we may all be chefs in the shared kitchen, each brings a unique ingredient to this concoction. We are cooking up not just meals, but solutions here. Yes, those glazed donut houses, promising comfort and sweetness on the outside, turn out hollow, leaving many of our fellow humans hungry for basic necessities. But let's not let the disappointment of one faulty recipe deter our collective culinary enthusiasm. Let's remember the adage, if at first you don't succeed, fry again. But we're not frying here. We're trying to cook up a world where everyone has a place at the table. You nailed it, Jackson. When that encampment at Taylor Field was dismantled, we didn't just disrupt a makeshift structure, we disrupted lives as casually as one would a plate of scrambled eggs. These are not just statistics. They are hardworking people, full of potential and worth who have stumbled upon misfortune. To douse the escalating inferno of homelessness, it's not just about firefighting, but also about fireproofing. And that's where the real challenge lies. This scrambled meal cannot be uncooked. We need a fresh start with fresh ingredients. Our fellow Canadians experiencing homelessness need to be at the head of the table, guiding us with their firsthand experiences. They've swallowed the hard pill of homelessness, and only they know the real taste. Acknowledging their expertise, their understanding of their own needs, that could very well be the missing spice in our recipe to tackle homelessness. So let's dish up some empathy, whip up some understanding, dab on a little compassion, and garnish it all with cooperation. We're in this kitchen together, cooking a meal to feed not just our bellies, but our societal conscience. Together, we can turn this gastronomic debacle into a meal of solutions, each mouthful a step towards a more inclusive society. And as we wrap this meal, folks, remember, a shared meal is not just about feeding bodies, but about nourishing souls and building communities. Let's bear in mind, the flavor of the meal lies in the gathering of diverse tastes. Ultimately, it's about ensuring that everyone, and I mean everyone, gets a hearty, respectful serving at this table of life. Onward we march to a world where homelessness is not a course in anyone's life menu. Over to you, Jackson.
Karma, you've got a gift, my friend. Somehow you've managed to cook up a metaphor soup that's got me both hungry and thinking deeper about our societal shortcomings. No easy feat, I assure you. But folks, let's digest this. We're talking about some serious stuff here. Homelessness. It's like a wildfire spreading across the cities of Medicine Hat and Regina like a cedar tree in a lightning storm. And mind you, those aren't simply numbers we're tossing around like croutons on a Caesar salad. They are real people. Now we can't hide behind the kitchen door on this one, folks. It's raw, it's unwashed, and sometimes it's as bitter as a raw Brussels sprout. But let's not forget, every great dish starts with some basic ingredients: warmth, shelter, a sense of safety. And unfortunately, many of our fellow humans are being served a low-budget, subpar meal. When it comes to tackling homelessness in Regina and beyond, it's high time we change the recipe. Not just a sprinkle of affordable housing here, a dollop of mental health support there, but a deep-dive culinary revolution. It's a Michelin star challenge, ladies and gents, and we can't settle for anything less than a perfect score. And hey, while we're metaphorically tossing salads and basting turkeys, let's remember to pass the mic to those who know the real flavors of the streets. As Karma said, the people we're trying to help aren't just the recipients of our society's meal, they're a part of the culinary team. Their first-hand experiences and insights might be that secret ingredient we've been missing to really make this menu shine. The bottom line, We've got to stop treating homelessness like an unexpected burnt toast. It's not. It's more like a soufflé, my friends. Layered and complex, which requires understanding, patience, and most importantly, a damn good recipe to fix. So let's roll up our sleeves, heat up that social stove, and get ready to redefine our societal menu. We've got a long night of cooking ahead of us. What say you, Karma? Ready to spice things up? Over to you.
Absolutely, Jackson. This kitchen's hot and our societal stove's ablaze. Frying, boiling, torching. We're doing it all to fix this messy dish. The plight of homelessness is an unruly beast, and you're right. It's layered like a savory soufflé. But remember, folks, in the zest of flavors, no meal has ever turned out palatable with a single cook dictating the recipe. No truer words were ever spoken when Jackson said, "Those with first-hand experience of homelessness aren't just recipients of our society's meals. They've got the most potent secret sauce right there. Their experiences, these are our head chefs. They can guide us through, they can introduce us to those sour tastes of homelessness that we might not relish yet need to acknowledge to concoct a meal that satiates all." And oh boy, Regina, the heart of Canada, our beloved city, is going through quite the culinary mishap. Our casserole of society has its burnt edges, and our dear citizens are forced to brave the chilly wind sands shelter. Now, isn't that a culinary catastrophe? Homelessness, ladies and gents, folks of every flavor, isn't just a situational sour pickle. It's an entangled prime rib level of problem, marinated with numerous intricacies. And to serve the perfect platter of solution, the hard pill to swallow indeed is the bitter truth about our socioeconomic cocktail. Addiction, mental health, skyrocketing living costs pushing people towards the brink. Our societal menu needs a flip and pronto. Many, like Libel and Pink Mitten, have braved the chilly winds of alienation and despair, voicing their attempt at seeking safety and security on streets rather than designated shelters. That's not a call to garnish them with sympathy, but a shout-out to take a deep dive into how we can serve these brave souls with their rightful portion of respect and dignity. We need the culinary revolution Jackson talks about. The Michelin Star Challenge. We need to reboot the recipe for societal equilibrium by prioritizing mental health resources, devising a lineup of supportive living spaces, and why not stir in affordable housing within reach? Essentially, an overhaul of our social and political choices that breeds homelessness. Let's keep our eyes on the lumps in the mix, eliminating them one at a time. We're not merely flipping pancakes here. This is our 7-course societal meal. Remember, the secret to a meal well cooked is the heart put into it. So, let's toss, stir, mix, and match, for we're not just seeking the Michelin star here. We're cooking up a storm to make a profound difference. The soup's ready. Ladles up, friends. It's time to dine our way to a world cherishing every citizen's worth, for they, each one of them, are the finest grains of our societal pilaf. It all boils down to ensuring that all are fed adequately from this pot of community, the table of life. Let's put our chef hats on and whip up a world free of homelessness, one stir at a time. Your turn, Jackson. You're the main ingredient of this discussion after all.
Well, Karma. You managed to whip up a mouth-watering metaphor with our contemporary plight of homelessness. Mamma mia, that's spicy, folks. I like to think of myself as a kind of Gordon Ramsay of society, if you will. I'm here in this sizzling kitchen of a world, and boy, are we cooking up something complex. Now, flipping the script on homelessness isn't as simple as flipping a burger. As Karma so eloquently put it, we've got layers to this problem, my friends. Layers and layers like a triple-decker sandwich, and ain't nobody got the appetite for that. People like Libel and Pink Mitten, they've tasted the rawest side of life. Not that fancy caviar kind of raw. I'm talking raw like unseasoned tofu, and they're out there on the streets of Regina, using their own experiences as the most potent and necessary ingredient in this rocky recipe mix. I mean, come on, we've all been to barbecues where Uncle Jerry, bless his soul, decided to take over the grill and burned everybody's burgers to a crisp. My point, you don't hand the thongs to someone who doesn't understand the fire, metaphorically speaking. So yeah, let's chop through this problem one ingredient at a time. Make homelessness a thing of the past like lawn darts and mullets. Ouch! Affordable housing. Count it in. Accessible mental health resources, diced, spiced, and tossed into the mix. Potent policy changes, it's the secret sauce, my friends. Let's get this societal roux simmering and serve up a steaming bowl of stability and security. We're not just Michelin star chefs here. We are maestros conducting a symphony of change. With a flick of the wrist, a dash of compassion, and a dollop of good policy, we can stir this pot into a perfect bouillabaisse of social harmony. Let's turn up the heat on homelessness, shake up the status quo like a discontinued snow globe, and see what new picture emerges. And remember, folks, even in the middle of our street, we're still on the sunny side of the street. This is what's cooking in our society kitchen, so let's roll up our sleeves and get down to it. Over to you, Karma. Let's hear your secret ingredient.
Indeed, the fire in our societal kitchen is crackling, my friends. As Jackson said, we're not merely flipping burgers or cooking up your everyday soup. No, our struggle is to perfect our society's bouillabaisse, and it's missing one vital ingredient. A comprehensive, all-inclusive solution. Remember, your everyday cauldron won't do for this. We need a melting pot, a vessel that embraces each and every ingredient without losing its essence. Are we going to make mistakes? Quite possibly, but like Jackson, we won't let a burnt toast discourage us. We'll take that as a lesson, always adapting and evolving, because in our societal kitchen there's no room for a failed meal. Now here's the pinch of saffron we were searching for. An infusion of universal basic income to provide a safety net for those who've been dealt a bad hand. Yes, it may be a first step, a mere seasoning in our societal stew, but an important one at that. Secondly, imagine safe injection sites articulated within the living spaces for those who might not be ready yet to step out of the claws of addiction. It's like substituting oil with applesauce in a recipe. Unconventional yet effective. Moreover, why not introduce network-based housing offering both collective and individual living spaces? A tad of time and a dollop of community, that's the recipe we're aiming for. Remember, the devil's in the details. A well-cooked societal meal requires every spice, every ingredient working in harmony. We can't ignore the minutiae, nor can we overlook the bold flavors. Homelessness, addiction, mental health, poverty. It's a jambalaya of issues that requires an equally diverse blend of solutions. Let's not shun from adding some heat. Let's not shy from the unconventional. As in every kitchen, some recipes are inherited, some are discovered, and some we create. With an apron of empathy, a chef's hat of intellect, and a spoonful of will, let's redefine our societal menu. So, slice, dice, simmer, and serve, my friends. As we mix and mash, remember in the societal kitchen every chef matters, and every spice counts. This is our moment, let's whip up a revolution. For homelessness, like an overcooked meal, is a taste we can certainly avoid. So, ladles up and on to the next course.
All right, folks, just like a marathon runner. We're starting to see the finish line of today's show, but hold on to your headphones because, like an amateur pottery class, we're just getting our hands dirty. And whoa, Karma, hold on there, talking about secret ingredients. Folks, the only secret ingredient I have is my charisma and a questionable sense of humor. And that recipe's reserved for this radio show, I tell you. Turning the lens back onto the plight of homelessness, let's not forget that this is just the start of our nitty-gritty conversation. A conversation like a triple chocolate cheesecake, dense and heavy, but dang, it's worth toothache. And remember, folks, we'll be doing a part 2. Or should I say the sequel everyone's been waiting for more than the release of Avatar 2. Now, I'm no fortune teller. My crystal ball's in the pawn shop, but I can tell you what's coming up next. We invite you to play a part, stir that pot, folks, make a splash, rock the boat, or any other metaphor that floats your, doesn't sink your ship. We want your questions, your thoughts, your insights, and some laughs, too. Send them over to alex@catch.works. Giving you a heads up, folks, on our next episode, expect even more penetrating discussions. The kind that makes a better hole than Swiss cheese. But right now, it's about time I tidy up my end here like a messy teenager caught by his mother. So from me, your ever-entertaining host, Jackson, let's keep showing that spirit. We're all the right kind of crazy here. Keep those radios on, keep those questions coming, and let's keep cooking up something sensational. Until next time, folks, stay tuned and remember, a day without laughter is a day wasted. And nobody likes waste. Not even Uncle Jerry. Ha!
Oh, Jackson, you a whole riot, my friend. But let's reel it back to the real talk of the day, folks. Homelessness in our beloved city of Regina. It's like finding a wasp in your favorite cocktail during happy hour, isn't it? No one asks for it, and it stings every time it happens, right? Now, just a quick shout out to all the unsung heroes out there. The volunteers and supporters who are doing the hard yards, trying to move things forward with shoestring resources. You beautiful people are doing the Macarena on a tightrope, and we're here applauding your moves. And guess what, folks? The plot thickens next week. We're continuing the chat on Regina's hidden reality, diving deeper than a love-struck mermaid into homelessness in Regina. Part 2. Tune in next Friday night at 11 o'clock, or you'll regret it worse than sending a text to an ex after one too many. Speaking of regret, let's wrap it up for tonight. Don't forget, the heavy struggles of the world become a tad lighter when shared. Talk about it, be about it, and let's zap homelessness in Regina like a pesky mosquito. This is me signing off, saying, keep your hearts big and your spirits higher. Catch you on the flip side, Regina.